Well, here's the latest project in the garage. This is a Suzuki two-wheel drive. I've been told it's a 250. I just pulled it in here. I haven't really done much with it. It runs. I drove it in here. The biggest problem with this thing is the front end is like the rack and the fenders, it's all completely mangled. You can see it's being held together with some Romex wire, and there's a bungee cord up under there. I just brought this home from a friend's house. My buddy, this belonged to him, and he takes pity on me and cuts me real good deals on stuff. I hauled some stuff home for him not too long ago from a big sale we were at, and he took pity on me, I think because I'm so ugly, and he let me bring this home. So it was a good quad. He's had it for years, and he said it's always been reliable, runs real good. He let a young man come out to his place and ride it for a little bit, and I guess that young man disappeared back in the woods for a while. Come up, parked the quad in the barn, and didn't say much about it. And then my buddy goes out and realizes that this, it's all busted up like that, and he questions that guy, and oh, well, what? Well, no, that's nothing, no big deal. So that was, needless to say, that was the last time that feller got to ride that four-wheeler. So anyhow, the rack and stuff, like I say, it's all busted up. It was blue when my buddy bought it. He bought it off some young kid, I guess, and originally it would have been yellow, looks like, underneath there, but that young kid before him painted it blue for whatever reason, I don't know. So it looks like that boy that beat on it that day, it looks like he broke up the handles and stuff. I'm guessing this cable here is probably the reverse. Normally there's like a cable you got to pull to click it down into reverse. I'm guessing that's probably it there. Of course, this brake handle is busted off here. It's automatic clutch. You don't need there's no manual clutch, but it is a foot shifter. Parking brake, I guess that's a parking brake catch. That's, of course, bent. Needs a couple of grips. That's minor. The front brakes are non-existent, so we'll dig into that. But for tonight, I'm going to disassemble the thing and see what's broken, see what needs welded, and just what needs put back together. So I'll catch you up as we go here. And like I say, I think it's a 250. I think that's what he told me it was. I got no idea what year it is or exactly what model it is. I might have to see if I can find a stamp on it somewhere to tell me that. So I'll update you here as we go. Well, there's a rack off the thing. It don't look bad really, but there's the parts and pieces that come off of it. A handful of bolts is all it took to get it off of there. I think I'm missing quite a few pieces though. This is broke off here. This is broke off down here. These are broke off here. This rod goes on this side, but the rod on the other side's missing. This rod I think goes here, but the rod on the other side's missing, and these two here, their parts are missing. So I don't think this rack is going back on this quad. I think I'll probably just run it without a rack, or I may fabricate some kind of real crude rack out of tubing or something like that. But there's nothing holds the front of this plastic up, so I almost have to do something here. If nothing else, maybe I make a small push bumper or something, support the center plastic, and then I can tie the side plastics to the center part. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and take this center portion off here anyhow and see what it looks like under there. All right, well, it's been a few days since I've messed with this project. I got online and ordered some parts that we're gonna need, ordered the grips. Looked like 7/8 of an inch is a pretty standard size grip. So got those on the way. I ordered a used assembly here, this whole brake assembly. And what I was originally thinking was, possibly the reverse mechanism. This thing, that's just the brake cable. That's the end of the brake cable. And actually this I thought was the choke. This is the reverse mechanism. So You have to pull that in order to downshift from neutral into reverse. So I thought there was something up here on this handle. That's why my Hondas used to be anyhow. But so this is the brake cable here. It looks like it's probably in pretty good shape. So I got the whole assembly coming. It's got 2 wires that come off of it. I may not need all that junk. I might just hopefully be able to get away with using parts of it. So waiting on those parts. In the meantime, I think I'm going to go ahead and tackle this rack. Now, I thought about not even putting a rack on here, but the rack is the support for the front of the fender. So I got to do something up here. I don't necessarily need a rack to put storage on. I guess it'd be kind of nice, but I don't need it. But I do need something to support the front of the fenders. I also, hell, I contemplated chopping the fenders off and just be done with the whole mess, but the fenders got the headlights in them, so it'd be nice to have headlights. And fenders are nice to keep the mud and stuff off of. You've had quads that don't have fenders, and you kind of regret it sometimes. So I'm trying to do this with stuff I've got on hand, and hardware is kind of an issue for me. This being a Suzuki is a Japanese quad. Everything's metric on it. I don't keep a whole lot of metric hardware, but I was able to round up enough bolts where I've got 4 bolts that thread into the existing I guess nuts, you know, existing threaded portions of the frame, whatever you want to call that. So I think I'm good on hardware there. I think I'm going to try to bend the thing out of some rebar. I got some rebar pieces laying around. They're about 5 feet long, so I got enough where I could really, you know, cut up and do some fabricating and, you know, tinkering around, see if I can make something, maybe just like a, I don't know, I'm thinking kind of a half loop that comes out, comes around here, and attaches back to that, and then come off of that with a bar. I don't know, some kind of structure to right here is what I really need to support. So I'm going to do some bending and some figuring with the rebar to attach the rebar at these points. I think what I'm going to use is I've got a whole cabinet full of just standard nuts. I'm going to drill those out so there ain't no threads in the way. And they're this size. I don't even know what size that is. That's pretty close to the same diameter of the bolts that I'm using, but I don't need the threads in the way, and I want a good snug fit on here. So I'm going to drill this out so that those bolts will go through. They won't be interfered with by those threads, and then wherever I need to fasten, I'm just going to weld that nut onto that rebar, and hopefully that'll be strong. I thought about heating up the end of the rebar, you know, wherever I need to fasten it, pound it flat and drill a hole through it. That'd just be a giant pain in the butt, I think. So try this. If it don't work, well, we'll move on to something else. Well, I gave up on the idea of using nuts, and I just went to washers. So you can see I got a small stack. There's 4 washers in that stack. And how I got to this point is I just bolted the washers on where I wanted my attachment points to go on the frame. So I snugged up all my washers on there, and then just kind of took, this was the first piece of rebar I laid up there. I just kind of eyeballed where the plastic, I kind of bolted the plastic together to itself. I kind of laid it up there where I wanted it, and held a piece of bar up here and kind of stuck my finger on about how long I wanted it. And I chopped this one and that one, same length. Then I come back over here, and so that was, you know, tacked, and then I tacked them on roughly where I wanted them. I come back over here and I kind of held a bar up, you know, against between that washer and the end of this bar. Put my thumb on it, walked over to the chop saw and cut 2 of them the same. So that's what's gotten me to this point. The next thing I've done is I got washers on the back side of these bolts. So that's going to be the attachment points for the fender. Stuck my tape measure up in there best I could. Give me a rough estimate. There's a lot of play here, but about 1.5 inches is what I'm going to go with there. So I cut 2 little pieces 1.5 inches, and I just, everything I've been kind of dressing it just a little bit on the bench grinder, just knock the burr off and knock the rust off the edge. So I'm going to tack those in between this bar and the stack washers on the back side of that bolt, and go from there. So then I'll put a cross piece on across here, and I may end up putting a piece of plate on there. That'd make kind of a nice little brush guard. Running through weeds and shit, they'd slide right off. So we'll see what this turns into. Everything's just tacked right now, so I could break it apart pretty easy if I had to. Well, I kind of had to slightly modify how I was tacking these washers on the top here. As you can see, they're cooled down now. I just finished up welding the rest of the frame. That down there is still hot, I'm sure, but this is where I kind of started up here. So the welds are ugly, but they ought to hold. The reason I had to modify how I was doing this was just tacking these washers on here generated enough heat where it melted the tab off of this fender. So as I was tacking that, I realized that the thing was melting off. And so that tab's gone. I drilled a hole over here. I'm gonna bend this over and should be able to force it in. This side, before I pulled it all apart before I could do any damage to that side. So it's all welded up now. I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can stick that top piece of plastic back on here and get the plastic bolted up and have a look at how well that's gonna support them plastics. Well, I tell you, it ain't the prettiest thing in the world, but it is a damn sight better than it was. When you figure that this fender and headlight have been rubbing on this wheel, so they're on there pretty sturdy now. These plastics are actually, they're on here a whole lot better now than I thought they would be when I got done with this. You can see I put an extra couple of bolts in here, just securing the plastic to itself. This bolt here is holding the headlight in, because all the plastics are held together by little tabs and slots, and those tabs are all broke off or bent real bad. Most of them are broke off and missing. And these things take like a little push pin. Of course, those broke when I was taking them out, so I just put 1/4 bolts in there. I'm pretty happy with how that looks. So it's functional, and that's exactly what I was going for. It ain't the prettiest thing, but it is functional. So see about what I got laying around to make a plate for the front of this, and we'll go from there. Well, we got our brake handle assembly in the mail, and I didn't replace the whole assembly. It came with 2 wires that kind of go down and disappear, and the handle and the bracket and the whole bit. What I did was my wires were good and the bracket was good. I just needed the handle with this. When you take the handle off, this parking brake lever comes with it. So rather than using that old one that was kind of bent, I just went ahead and used this new one. So so I got that mounted up, then turned my attention to the battery on this thing was sitting here, and it was completely dead. It wouldn't take a charge at all. I got my charger over here. I put it on the old battery and turned the switch, hit the key, and the starter cranks, and it actually started itself up. So that was good. So I know that the starter system is good. But I have a couple of these batteries. They're way bigger than the original one. This is 7 by 7 by 3. The original one's like 5 by 3.5 by 2 or something. I mean, it's a whole lot smaller. So the batteries that I had, they're the cheapest ones I'm gonna find. And use what you got if you can. So I was able to stuff that into, I guess it had that black plastic lid over top of this compartment. I guess it's just like a trunk compartment for storage or whatever. So I crammed that battery down in there, and it's a brand new battery, but I went ahead and put it on the charger, and we're just about fully charged now. I had the red cable was long enough. I pulled a little extra out. The red cable was long enough to reach back there. The black cable was not, so I made up an extension out of 10 gauge stranded copper wire and just bolted it together. This is going to ground, so I don't really mind if that bounces around and touches whatever, as long as it don't short against the red cable. And this cable, the jacket is in real good shape, so I'm not going to worry about covering that up at all. So that's going to be good. And I took a little bit of time while I was jacking around with the wiring on the battery, I started looking at this winch. Now, the boy that busted up the front end, apparently he also lost the switch for the winch. So the winch won't work without the switch. And rather than kind of rig up a new switch or whatever, I don't really like the position of that winch. It sits up tall, and it'd be kind of in the way if I wanted to lay something big on the rack here. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and just remove the winch. I'll keep it. It's supposed to be a good winch, but the wiring for it was shot anyhow. These wires are frayed. They were rubbing against the frame and stuff, so I would have to replace the wiring anyhow. So I'm just going to go ahead and take the winch off of there. So I'm going to get that winch off of there. I'm going to take a look at the air box and see what that filter looks like in there. I haven't even peeked in there yet. Well, heck, there's a filter in there. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna get that filter out, clean it up, take that winch off the back there, and I'll catch you guys up here in a bit. Well, guys, you can see I got the air filter back in there. It was in actually pretty good shape, so I was able to wash it real well with soap water, wring it dry, and then saturate it with oil. I used I got a jug of old 2-cycle oil up on the shelf there, that yellow jug. It's so old, it was in an old boat that I had years ago. I don't trust it to use as fuel, you know, mixing up fuel with, but for stuff like this, it works real well. Just, you know, saturate it and wring it back out of oil. And them old foam filters are pretty good just because you can reuse them. So anyhow, I got that taken care of. I took the rack off the back. When I took the rack off I took the winch off the back rack. And when I was removing the winch, I noticed that I was missing a bolt holding the taillight on, and a couple of the bolts were loose on the rack. So got them all tightened back up. I put this side panel on. And a lot of these plastics on this thing are held together with these little push pins, and push pins and then tabs. The tabs are all broke off this panel, and I ended up bolting it on with a couple of 1/4-20 bolts. So it's on there pretty good now. I stuck a piece of fuel line on here for a vent. I think that's 1/4 inch inside diameter fuel line there to vent the gas cap. The handlebar grips, I ordered them on eBay, and when I got them, they're the wrong ones. So I sent the seller a message about that today. We'll see how he wants to handle that. But really, that's about all I'm going to do with this thing. I mean, it kind of looks rough, but the thing runs really good. I think my buddy Brad kept pretty good care of this thing. I mean, hell, I didn't even hit the throttle. It fires right up, runs smooth. Turn the headlights on. Headlights work. So I think that's about all I'm going to do to this thing, guys. It like I say, it kind of looks rough, but runs smooth. And now that it's got a battery starter, I don't have to use that recoil starter. That's really nice. So that's about it, guys. So if hopefully this video helped you if you're working on something like this, give you some ideas of what to do or what not to do. If I did help you, or you like this video, click that thumbs up button. I'd sure appreciate it. If you guys got any comments or questions or anything, leave them down below, and I'd be glad to help if I can. And if you want to see more videos like this, me working on this, or heck, I just rebuilt that gas grill a couple weeks ago. That video's on my channel now, and I need to work on that Kubota tractor. That's a MX 5200. Make sure the maintenance is up to date on it. We just brought it home, bought it used about a month ago. So click that subscribe button. You get to see all them videos I make and post all the time. Until the next video, guys, keep on tinkering.